One, inquire into the irregular takeover of the land in Chepchabas area in Bomet and Kericho counties with objective of facilitating due compensation for the residents of the area who were compelled into squatter life in their own ancestral land. And number two, undertake a satisfactory audit of the original sale of land to the Chepchabas Farmers Cooperative Society to ascertain whether the entire 600,000 acres of land were actually granted to the society, and whether each squatter got land that they paid for, and orders that the said land grant be given unconditionally if found not to have been duly, fully granted. And number three, recommends that where possible, James Finlay Kenya Limited grants Chepchabas squatters preemptive rights in any future land dealings. And number four, recommends that people, or possible, where possible, that James Finlay Kenya Limited share Mense profits with Chepchabas squatters proportionately for the number of years the farm has utilized the land. And finally, number five, that it makes any other appropriate recommendation it deems fit in addressing the circumstance raised in this petition. And your petitioner will ever pray. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
As you'll appreciate, those three petitions could take the committee the rest of this year. I mean, given all what you have said, even that last one, I doubt that the committee can even finish dealing with it in the remaining period of this year. It's a lot. But nevertheless, I believe the committee is up to the task. So I will not allow comments on these two petitions because I think we have gone beyond the 30 minutes, which is reserved for comments and clarifications or petitions. So move to the next order.
Order number 5. Oh, sorry.
Honourable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House. Today, Tuesday, September 15th, 2020, in the afternoon sitting. Number one, the draft 2020 Budget Review and Outlook paper from the National Treasury Investigation, DCI magazine. They are...
Honourable Lekenta. Button.
Implementation on its consideration of submissions from stakeholders regarding implementation status of legislations, petitions and resolutions passed by the House, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, June 30th, 2020. Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Implementation on the implementation status of the report of the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock on a petition on an inquiry into the crisis facing the sugar industry in Kenya, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, June 20th, 2019. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Very well. Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
First segment, member for Muranga. Question by private notice. Yes, there. Where you are put.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask the question to the Cabinet to ask a question to Cabinet Secretary for Tourism and Wildlife. 1. Could the Cabinet Secretary confirm that the appointment of members of the Tourism Regulatory Authority Board by Gazette Notice number 5462 of 7th August 2020 was carried out in compliance with the requirements of Section 81G of the Tourism Act? Number 2, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the circumstances under which the appointment of one Pauline Njoroge to the said board was revoked 24 hours after gazettement? And number 3, was MS Njoroge given a fair hearing prior to the revocation of her appointment to the board under the reference in the accordance with Article 50 of the Constitution of Kenya? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question to be replied before the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. Next question by the member for Ainamoy, Honorable Silvanas Maritim.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to ask question number 24 of 2020 to the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Coordination of National Government. Question number 1. Could the Cabinet Secretary provide status of investigation into the killing of the late Bernard Kibet Ngeno, who was an M-Pesa operator in Kapsoit's shopping center in Ainamoy constituency, and who was brutally murdered on 24th August 2020, and the steps taken to ensure that the murderers are apprehended? Question number 2. What action has been taken against the police officer who is alleged to have murdered the late Patrick Kibrono Kirui of identification number 35880675 on 4th September 2020 at Kapsoit Shopping Center?
Honorary questions. Member for Tetu, James Ishui. For questions, members, I encourage you to be pressing your intervention button. Yes, that one.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to ask question number 164 of 2020, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Labor and Social Protection. Question number 1. Could the Cabinet Secretary provide the list of beneficiaries under the cash transfer program for older persons in Tetu constituency? 2. What criterion was used to identify the said beneficiaries? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question referred to be replied before the Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. Next question by the member for Meru County, Honorable Bishop Kawira Mwangaza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. My question is 183 of 2020 to the Cabinet Secretary for Labor and Social Protection. 1. How much money under the COVID-19 Emergency Response Fund cash transfer has been disbursed to Meru County for the purposes of mitigating the negative impact of COVID-19? Question number 2. Could the Cabinet Secretary provide the criteria used to identify the beneficiaries, details of the beneficiaries, and the amount received by each recipient? Number 3. What measures has the Ministry put in place to ensure equity in the distribution of the resources to vulnerable people residing in the informal settlement and rural areas in Meru County? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
To be replied before the Department of the Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. Next question by the member for Soy, the Honorable Caleb Kostani.